I never believed in ghosts. In Hong Kong, people whisper about 1,000 urban legends: the woman who appears in the elevator mirror, the white figure on Victoria Peak, the apartment blocks where no one lives. But children cry at night. I laughed at them all, the way you laugh at ghost stories around a campfire, until I saw that photograph. It was taken on September 16th, 1989, late at night, in the dim corridor of a Kowloon apartment block. 8 of us had gathered for a birthday party, drunk on cheap whiskey mixed with lemon tea, singing Teresa Teng songs until the neighbors threatened to call the police. At the end of the night, we decided to take a group photo, setting the camera on a tripod and squeezing together under a flickering fluorescent light. There should have been 8 of us. I remember exactly where we stood, who was laughing, who was rolling their eyes at the idea of a photo. But when the film was developed the next morning, there were 9 faces staring back. The 9th didn't belong to anyone we knew. She stood just behind us, hair long and damp, as if she had stepped out of the rain. Skin as pale as paper. Her eyes were black but empty, no light reflecting in them. Not even the faint sparkle every other pair of eyes caught from the bulb above. I tried to explain it away: bad film, a trick of exposure, maybe someone passing in the corridor. But the longer I stared, the less it looked like an accident. She wasn't blurred. She wasn't half caught. She was there, sharp and clear, like she had been standing with us all along. And the worst part, every time I looked at that photo again, I could swear the number of people in it kept changing. The first rule of sanity is to test your memory against something that doesn't care about you. Paper is good at that. Negatives are better. At 2:05 p.m., I took the envelope back to the 1-hour lab on Sai Yung Choi Street. The air outside smelled like hot metal and sweet bean curd. Inside, the fluorescent lights flattened everything into honesty. Mr. Tam looked up from a chemical tray and raised his eyebrows in a way that asked 10 questions without giving me time to answer one. "I need to see the negs," I said. He didn't ask why. He slid open a drawer, sifted a stack of sleeved film like a man shuffling a pack he knew by scent, and found mine. He brought the sleeves to the counter, laid a white sheet of paper underneath, and turned on the light box. Clean light rose through orange plastic, like truth through tea. "There," I said, and I hated the relief in my voice. Frame 23. The corridor. 8 of us, where the world remembers us. And the 9th, where the world refuses to explain. She wasn't a print error. She wasn't a lab joke. She was silver halide embedded in cellulose. The emulsion itself admitting that it had seen her. Mr. Tam took a loop from his apron pocket and handed it to me. "Go slow," he said. "People see what they want to see if they hurry." Under magnification, the edges of her hair were too clean to be a ghost of another frame. No double outline, no telltale seam of overlapping exposures. The shadow under her jaw fell left, same as mine. The faint specular highlight on Alan's cheek had a twin at the same angle on her cheekbone. Even the fluorescent stuttering made the same kind of barely there banding across her and across us. The physics had shaken her hand and welcomed her into the family. Only her eyes refused the treaty. No catchlight. Everyone else had a pinprick. Even Des, whose glasses threw 2 white squares like tiny doors. She had nothing. As if light, given the choice, had gone around her the way water flows around a rock that was never supposed to be there. Could be someone stepped out from a flat. Mr. Tam said softly, performing rationality like a last rite. You didn't notice. Happens. If she had stepped out farther down the corridor, I said, at F2, 8, she'd be soft. But she's as sharp as we are. Mr. Tam glanced at the frame lines. 50 millimeter, maybe 2 meters from the group. Your depth of field would be... He calculated in his head the way lab men count rosaries. Not enough for both planes to be crisp if she was behind those two. He tapped where my shoulder and Carmen's crown would have been if I had named them out loud. But she is crisp, and if she had been moving, he knew what I was asking. He also knew what he could afford to answer. Motion blur at this light would make a ghost. She is not blurred. We stared at the strip in a silence thick with the wet rag smell of the dark room. Finally, he slid the sleeves back and pinched them into the envelope. Develop one more test, he said. Same camera, same lens, same place, same time of night. If you get something again, he did not finish the sentence because finishing would make us partners in whatever came next. I'll bring it tonight, I said. Bring the negatives, he said. Not only prints. By 7:31 p.m., the heat had backed off enough to pretend it was night. I called the others, the 8 who should have been 8, and told them I wanted to recreate the shot. They laughed at me over the phone, then stopped when I did not laugh with them. We met by the building's front gate at 8:05 p.m. The city's noise blew past us like a conversation we weren't invited to join. We didn't bring balloons or lemon tea this time. We brought a tripod and caution, which don't look good in photos, but live longer. We climbed in a knot so close I could feel the heat through their sleeves. By the time we reached the 6th floor, the bulb over 6D had already performed its trick twice. On. Almost out. On. In that almost out. The corridor's green walls turned the color of old bruises. Same position, I said, because logic likes rituals. I set the Minolta on the tripod, adjusted to 50 millimeter again, opened the lens to f2, 8, and aligned the frame so the seam in the floor tile ran like a thin horizon under our shoes. I set the timer for 10 seconds. The camera blinked its small red promise. Say something normal, Des said. Voice too low to be a joke. Normal is boring, Faye said, because she had to say something. Her voice was gentler than she meant it to be. The timer blinked faster. We pressed together without admitting we were pressing together. The bulb hummed. Somewhere down the stairwell, a radio tried to sell a detergent to a woman who did not believe in detergents or radios. The camera fired. The flash punched the wall, swallowed the corridor, gave it back. Again, I said. We took 3 frames with us in it. Then I did something I didn't explain. I set the tripod to the same height, same field of view, same angle, same timer. I told the others to go inside the apartment and close the door. You're shooting an empty corridor, Des said, halfway between laugh and recoil. I want one control, I said. Same everything. No people. Except her, someone said behind their teeth. They shut the door. The corridor exhaled. The red light blinked with the patience of a machine that has no reason to fear what's outside its purpose. I stood back, as if I could make room for something I did not want to invite. The camera fired. The flash took the corridor and returned it. A magician who has never once failed to hand back the coin. At 9:14 p.m., we walked to the lab together, because courage is cheaper in groups. Mr. Tam locked the front door behind us, flipped the sign to closed, and pulled down the half shutter the way a priest might draw a screen. He developed the roll fast but careful, the way a man obeys a ritual without believing in the God it serves. He clipped the negatives onto the rack, the film hanging like a small dirty river over the sink. 5 minutes, he said. Then we look. We did not talk. Even Des didn't smoke. The second hand on the wall clock dragged like a man carrying buckets. The smell of stop bath stung the back of my throat and made me want water I didn't ask for. When the film dried enough to touch, Mr. Tam snipped the strip and laid it across the light box. Frame 3. Corridor. Our faces cautious. The geometry of how close humans can stand without confessing fear. Frame 4. Same. With a twitch of someone's mouth I didn't want to claim. Frame 5. Same. Frame 6. The empty corridor. Except it wasn't empty. Not exactly. Not if you have learned to count to 9. She wasn't fully there. The loop showed hair first. More suggestion than line. A dark against green that could have been stain if stain had angles, light respects. Then the edge of a cheek. Not the thing itself, but the refusal of things around it to occupy that space. A faint hollow where a catchlight should have been. A negative inside the negative. No, Faye said. And she said it so quietly, I felt it more than heard it. No, Mr. Tam didn't say anything. He adjusted the loop in his right hand, the way surgeons adjust a scalpel when the training ends and the cutting begins. It's less, I said, because math is what you grab when story fails. She's less present than in frame 23. I was naming the first photograph produced that morning, giving it a place in a sequence as if chronology could save us. Less. Mr. Tam agreed. But there. Light leak, Des asked, performing the old hope because it had to be performed by someone. Chemical streak. No, Mr. Tam said. He wasn't unkind. He just didn't have any more kindness left after the day. Look at the direction of the shadow under the stairwell molding. Look at the noise in the grain. Look at how the flashes fall off kisses the wall, and here, he tapped a place an inch left of where I knew her to be. You see how it avoids. It behaves as if something occupies that space. I asked a question I didn't want to ask. Has this happened before? He didn't answer immediately. He slid the negatives back into their sleeve and handed them to me by pinching the very edge. As if touch could transmit whatever this was. People bring me strange things. He said finally, I am a man who works with proof. Proof sometimes asks to be left alone. We made prints anyway, because once you begin, you commit to the format of your fear. By 10:03 p.m., we were back in the corridor. We hung the new prints under the same forgiving lamp in Carmen's living room. No balloons now. No songs. The first 3 frames were just us with our mouths arranged into uncomfortable shapes. The 4th. The empty corridor looked like a corridor. Unless you knew that photographs are sometimes instructions instead of memories. If you stared long enough, the grain stopped being random and started being obedience. The suggestion of hair became hair. The absence of a catchlight became proof of an eye that would not reflect. Tell me something rational, Carmen whispered. She wasn't mocking me. She was offering me a way back. if I knew the road. Someone came out of a flat, I said, and hid from the flash. Des said, weakly, playing along, without blurring. Faye added, because she wanted to be kind and couldn't. I sat on the edge of the sofa and counted. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Then I looked at the quarter print and counted nothing, because numbers require objects, and the object was an absence. We didn't drink. We didn't sing. We turned on the TV and let the news speak Cantonese. We didn't care to interpret. A plane passed overhead at 10:27 p.m., and the bowl on the cabinet trembled. Terence, who had been silent so long it hurt, said, "My grandfather used to say, photographs steal a second and keep it. Maybe someone else needs that second more than we do." "Don't," Carmen said. At 11:11 p.m., I got up to leave because leaving sometimes feels like agency. I paused at the wall because ritual is a habit, and habits are how fear keeps from becoming religion. I counted in the first group photo, 1 to 9. Relief washed me in a shameful wave. The world had agreed to be what it had been. Then my eyes slid, uninvited, to the empty corridor print. Something in the alignment of the stairwell's shadow had changed the smallest measurable fraction. The suggestion of hair had grown, by a degree that would look like failure in a lab and like a threat in a church. I did not say anything. I said goodnight. I closed the door with care, because doors deserve respect even when they are only pretending to separate things. The elevator was a mirror with a metal frame. The Polish left streaks that turned my face into a topography map. As the doors began to close, I saw movement at the end of the corridor and told myself it was the exhaustion of a day spent teaching paper to accuse. The doors slid together with that old building sigh. They shuddered and sprang back. Someone had pressed the call button from the hallway. I looked up, ready to say I was coming back to make room. No one stood there. The corridor hummed. The bulb over 6D pulsed on. Almost out. In the almost out, the metal frame of the elevator mirrored a thin streak of dark that wasn't shadow and wasn't stain. And my body reset to animal step back without asking me. The doors closed. The elevator groaned downward, gears obeying the oldest arithmetic in the building. I watched my face say nothing all the way to the ground floor. At 11:24 p.m., I stepped onto the street and exhaled, only because the air had not taken permission to stop me. Neon punished the pavement into colors. On the fence of the small park across the road, some family had taped a string of instant photos from a picnic. Groups of 4, 5, 7, smiling, shoulders touching, mouths mid-laugh. The wind lifted them and laid them down. For a second, nothing more one picture folded over another. The moment looked like addition. When the wind set the photos flat again, I wanted to cross the street and count them, one by one, until the numbers humiliated me back into being a person. I didn't. I went home. I put the negatives in the tin, on top of the first print. I sat on the floor and leaned against the bed, because chairs felt too much like decisions. The fan ticked at the end of each rotation. At 12:02 a.m., I turned off the light and lay down. Then I turned it back on. I don't know what woke me. A noise that wanted to be a knock, but failed at commitment. A change in the fan's ticking, like a coin stuck and released. the knowledge that I had left the tin slightly open, the lid not sealed. I closed the lid. I slid the tin into the drawer. I sat very still. The building breathed the way buildings do when they have learned the names of the people inside them. Somewhere above me, someone moved a chair. Somewhere below, a faucet made a sound like a throat clearing. At 12:19 a.m., I opened the drawer and took out the tin. I told myself I needed to confirm what I already knew, because confirmation is a drug that keeps you alive until morning. I opened the lid. I took out the empty corridor print. I held it under the desk lamp at a forgiving angle. If you don't look at the thing that wants to be seen, it grows. I looked. The hair was not suggestion anymore. It was hair. The cheek was not the absence of paint. It was cheek. The eyes were not catchlights because there were none. A shape was resolving in a place where there had been no permit for shapes to resolve. Something not shadow occupied the angle near the stairwell where the wall turned toward the landing. It had not been there at 10:03 p.m. It was there now. I put the print down. I turned off the lamp. I lay back and watched the ceiling be the ceiling. I wasn't afraid of ghosts. I had never believed in them. I was afraid of a world where paper can change when you are not looking, and where the second you thought you had stolen for yourself from a night in 1989 belonged, in fact, to someone else who had waited longer. I set my alarm for 9 a.m. because morning is a theory I still believed in. Then I closed my eyes, and in the darkness behind them, I saw the corridor lined up with its floor seam like a horizon. The bulb pulsing on, almost out, on, in a place left for someone who had not yet arrived, but fully intended to. Tomorrow, I told myself, we would test again. We would bring a second camera. We would set a mirror in the frame to force light to confess. We would ask Mr. Wong from 6F what he heard in the nights when we were children, with God's permission to be loud. We would be rational until rationality learned fear. I slept like a man, holding a photograph he pretends to have put away. 3:12 a.m. I woke with the sudden certainty that I wasn't alone. The fan in my room had stopped ticking. The air pressed too still, as if the walls themselves were listening. I told myself not to move, not to look at the drawer where the tin lay, but my hand betrayed me. The photograph of the empty corridor lit out under the lamp. The stairwell corner, where there had been nothing but shadow, was no longer empty. A shape had thickened there, not a trick of grain, not humidity warping paper, a curve that wanted to be a shoulder, the faint outline of hair. I tilted the print, searching for the catchlight that should live in every human eye. Carmen's eyes still sparkled in the group shot. Dez's glasses threw back twin squares, but hers, nothing. As if light refused her entirely. I whispered, "It's the film. Just bad film." The room didn't believe me. 4:02 a.m. The chirping woke me next. High, mechanical, patient, the self-timer of my Minolta. 10 beeps, except the shutter wasn't wound, and the body was empty of film. I unzipped the bag. The camera sat there, lifeless, the LED dark, still. The sound lingered in the room, echoing against the walls, long after it should have stopped. Then came the knock. Not hard, just a fingertip against wood, deliberate enough to make my chest tighten. I opened the door. The corridor stretched silent, green paint peeling under the buzz of the overhead bulb. No one stood there, but on the floor lay a new photograph. Not mine, not from any roll I'd shot. a cheap instant print, the kind you get from a booth at a night market. 7 strangers posed under paper lanterns, smiling wide. 6 smiled. 1 did not. At the very back, her pale, wet hair clinging to her cheek. The same black eyes without light. 5:03 a.m. I spread the photos across my desk. The group shot. The empty corridor. The strangers. My hands shook as I tried to count. 9, 10, 11. The numbers shifted each time my eyes swept across the faces. Sometimes, Des was missing. Sometimes Carmen. Sometimes me. But she was always there, sharper with each print. That was when I understood. The photos weren't just showing her. They were feeding her. And if I kept looking, she would find more than paper to live in. 9:05 a.m. The alarm went off, but I was already awake. I hadn't really slept, only drifted, surfacing every few minutes, like someone afraid of what might crawl into the room if he stayed under too long. I stuffed the 3 photos into a manila envelope and left my apartment. The stairwell smelled of bleach and old incense. Outside, Mongkok was alive again, stalls banging metal trays, buses groaning, the city already too loud for ghosts. That was what I told myself. Anyway, 10:30 a.m. Mr. Tam was behind the counter at the lab, sleeves rolled up, hands stained with developers. I slid the envelope toward him. "There's something new," I said. He opened it carefully, like the paper inside might be wet. First, he looked at the group photo, then the corridor shot. Finally, the instant print. His face didn't move much, but his hand tightened on the edge. "This one isn't mine," he said. "I found it outside my door last night." He lifted the instant print to the light. "This stock isn't from here. Look at the white border. The cut is from a Japanese pack, not Fuji, Hong Kong. Maybe a tourist brought it. But the girl's the same," I said. "Same face, same hair, same eyes with no light." "Mr. Tam exhaled through his nose. "Sometimes, people appear in pictures they don't belong to. Sometimes, it means nothing." He didn't sound like he believed that. 11:40 a.m. I stopped by apartment 6F. Mrs. Wong answered, the little dog in her arms, shivering like it always did. "You heard anything strange last night?" I asked. She looked at me a long time before answering. "Strange. Knocks. Footsteps. Maybe someone walking the corridor." The dog growled low in its throat. Missy Wong stroked its ears. "No one walks that corridor after midnight," she said. "Not since the girl." "What girl?" But she only shut the door, slow but firm, leaving the dog's growl behind the wood. 12:07 p.m. Back in my apartment, I laid the 3 photos out again on the desk. Morning light fell across them, soft and harmless. The group of 8, no, 9. The corridor, almost empty, but not. The strangers under lanterns, different nights, different people, different places, and always her. If ghosts don't exist, then what do you call someone who keeps showing up where they were never supposed to be? The photograph stopped being just mine. When I showed it to the others, no one laughed this time. They gathered in Carmen's apartment, voices low, as if speaking too loudly would draw her attention. Des lit a cigarette, even though Carmen hated smoke in the flat. Faye sat with her arms wrapped around herself, staring at the 9th figure, like she was waiting for it to blink. Kit finally said what none of us wanted to. She looked clearer than before. No one argued. That night, Des called me. He tried to sound casual, but his voice cracked halfway through. "I saw her," he said. "Not in the photo." "In my room, standing by the door. Same face, same hair." I turned on the light and he didn't finish. He didn't have to. 2 days later, Faye slipped on the MTR escalator. It wasn't serious, just a sprained wrist, but she swore someone had brushed against her before she fell. "Cold skin," she whispered. "Colder than metal." By the end of the week, we were all dreaming of corridors, long, green-painted hallways that stretched forever, lit by a single pulsing bulb. No matter how far we walked, she was always just behind us, never rushing, never slow, always keeping the same distance. At first, we blamed stress, the power of suggestion. But one night, Carmen laid all 3 photographs on her coffee table, and we sat around them like people circling a fire. "She's not fading," Carmen said. "She's following." And she was right. In the group photo, her figure stood sharp and whole. In the empty corridor, she was half-born, growing clearer each time we looked. And in the stranger's snapshot, she'd already stepped into someone else's memory, like the world itself was giving her new places to belong. That was when I realized something. The photo wasn't just showing her. It was spreading her. It was Des who finally said what everyone else was thinking. "Let's burn it." We gathered in the narrow courtyard behind Carmen's building, the one lined with rusted bicycle frames and laundry that never seemed to dry. The city hummed above us, buses groaning, neon spilling across concrete walls. Carmen brought the tin. I carried the lighter. The prints looked small in my hands, too small for the weight they carried. Group, corridor, strangers, her, always her. Des flicked the lighter, flame trembling in the humid air. "Paper burns easy," he said, like a dare. We placed the first print, the quarter shot on a broken brick. The flame caught fast, curling the edges into black. For a second, I felt relief. The shape in the stairwell blurred, then dissolved into smoke. But then the fire made it worse. The photograph didn't disintegrate the way paper should. The black spread inward, but her outline held longer than the rest, etched sharp against the ash, even when the paper collapsed into flakes. Her face was the last to go, staring up through heat, refusing to vanish until the fire ate everything. Nobody spoke. We tried the instant photo next. Carmen dropped it onto the flame, jaw tight. This time, the image blistered and melted unevenly, colors smearing into grotesque shapes. And yet, just before the print folded into ash, her pale figure seemed to twist, as though the fire had only made her shift. Faye stepped back. "She's not leaving," she whispered. "She's moving." We didn't burn the group photo. None of us could. It felt too much like asking her to step out of our memory entirely, like giving her permission to climb free of the frame. By midnight, the courtyard reeked of smoke, but none of us felt lighter. If anything, the air was heavier, thick with something the fire hadn't consumed. Later, when I got home, I opened my drawer. The tin was still there. Inside, the group photo lay untouched, but the space around it smelled faintly of burnt paper. And when I looked closely, I saw something that made my chest freeze. We had been 9 in that photograph. Now there were 10. We met again, though none of us wanted to. Carmen insisted, calling it one last time. Her living room was dim, curtains drawn tight, though it was barely evening. We sat in a circle around the coffee table, the group photo lying flat in the center like an uninvited guest. No one touched it. We just stared. The silence stretched until Des finally broke it. He lit a cigarette, inhaled too deep, and spoke without looking at us. "I saw her," he said. "Not in the photo. In my room. By the door. She didn't move. She just waited. When I turned on the light, she was gone. But the smell stayed. Wet hair. Like she'd just come in from the rain." No one laughed. Faye rubbed her wrist. The bandage still fresh. I thought I fell on the MTR escalator. But it wasn't a slip. Someone touched me. I felt a hand cold as metal. When I turned, there was no one there. Ming's eyes darted to the covered window. His voice was flat, clipped. "She follows me in reflections. Shop windows, bus glass, even in my bathroom mirror. She doesn't just stand there. She tilts her head, like she knows I see her." Kit spoke last, barely above a whisper. "The dreams won't stop. Always the same corridor. Always her footsteps behind me. Not chasing. Just keeping pace. Waiting." We all turned to Carmen then. She was the only one who hadn't spoken. Her face was pale, eyes fixed on the photograph between us. "She's getting closer," Carmen whispered. "Every night. In my dreams. She walks faster. Last night, I woke up and heard her footsteps outside my door. Not in the hall, right outside." The room fell silent again. The air felt heavy, as if the walls were listening. I looked at the photo on the table. Once, she had been just a shadow. Now, her shoulder nearly touched mine. "She's not fading," I said. "She's moving in." And nobody argued. The photograph had become the center of everything. None of us could look at it without feeling her presence closing in. None of us could throw it away, either. We were bound to it now, like a contract signed in a language none of us had chosen. We met one last time in Dez's flat. He looked thinner, restless, his walls still plastered with photocopies. The 10th figure stared at us from every sheet of paper, multiplied until the room itself seemed to breathe with her face. "We end it tonight," Dez said. "Not by burning, not by hiding. We tear it apart." Carmen shook her head. "You saw what happened when we burned them. She only grew stronger. If we destroy the original, she'll have nothing left to hold her. She'll be free. So what?" Dez snapped. "You want to live like this forever? Counting faces every morning, waiting to see how close she's gotten?" No one answered. The silence in that small flat was heavier than smoke. Then Ming lost control. He grabbed the photo tin, yanked it open, and pulled out the group picture. His hand shook, but his voice was sharp. "If none of you will do it, I will." He ripped once, the paper tearing down the middle, my face separating from Carmen's. For a heartbeat, relief surged through me, like a fever breaking. But then, the room went dark. Every bulb, every fluorescent tube, every streetlight outside, gone in an instant. We froze in the black, listening to our own breathing. And then we heard her. Footsteps. Slow, measured, on the floorboards. Not in the corridor. Inside the flat. Carmen gasped. "You freed her." We lit our phones. Weak cones of light swinging wildly across Dez's cluttered room. The photocopies on the walls fluttered as if stirred by wind. Though no window was open, And in every one, the 10th figure had moved, no longer standing still, but stepping forward. Ming dropped the torn halves of the photo. His hands bled from the paper's sharp edge, but he didn't notice. He just whispered, over and over, "She's here. She's here." And then the light snapped back on. The flat was silent. The photocopies hung limp. But the original photo, the torn halves, were gone. No one had touched them. We didn't speak about what happened in Dez's flat. Not directly. Each of us carried it away like a private wound, too deep to show. The torn photograph was gone. And with it, something between us broke. Dez stopped coming to work. His landlord said the rent was unpaid. The room locked from the inside. When they forced the door, the flat was empty. Every photocopy peeled from the walls. Every cigarette stub swept away. The only thing left was the tripod from that first night, standing in the corner as if waiting for another group picture. Ming moved out of Hong Kong altogether. He didn't say goodbye. He didn't have to. We all understood. The look in his eyes the last time we saw him, like someone running from a shadow that would only follow. Kit kept calling me, her voice thinner each time. "She's in the mirrors," she whispered once. "Every reflection. Even when I close my eyes, I see her behind me." A week later, her number stopped working. And Carmen, she tried to be strong. She kept the instant photo, claiming she wanted to study it, to understand. But her apartment grew darker each time I visited. Curtains always drawn, the air heavy, stale. She smiled less, spoke less, until one evening she simply said, "I think she wants me to join her, and I don't know if I can resist." After that, she stopped opening the door. By the end of the month, it was just me, the last one left who hadn't vanished, run, or surrendered. But I wasn't free. The group photo still existed, somewhere. I could feel it, not destroyed, not gone, just waiting, in someone else's hands, or maybe in places paper was never meant to travel. And every night, when the bulb above my bed flickered on, almost out, on, I felt her closer, not in the picture anymore, in the room. I knew I couldn't keep running. The photograph had taken Dez, Ming, Kit, maybe even Carmen. If I left it alone, it would take me too. So I went back to where it started, Meiwa Court, the 6th floor corridor outside 6D. The building hadn't changed much since 1989. Paint still flaked from the green walls. The same rusted mailboxes leaned against each other like old men waiting for news that never came. Even the bulb above the stairwell hummed the same sick rhythm, its light stuttering as though it remembered what we had done here decades ago. I brought the Minolta, loaded it with fresh film. No tripod this time, just my hands. I wanted to see if the camera would find her again. I stood where we had stood that night. I set the focus. I raised the viewfinder. The corridor filled the frame exactly as it had before floor seam cutting through. Paint cracked, shadows leaning. And then I felt it. The weight of someone at my shoulder, not touching, not breathing, just standing close enough that my body recognized another presence before my mind could. I didn't turn. I pressed the shutter. The flash burned the hallway white, echoed down the stairwell like a scream swallowed too quickly. When my sight cleared, I lowered the camera. The corridor looked empty again, but the air was colder, like the building itself had drawn in a breath and wasn't letting it out. I wound the film and shot again. Flash. White corridor. Silence. Flash. White corridor. Silence. Each time, the sense of someone behind me grew stronger until I couldn't tell if I was the one pressing closer to her or she was pressing closer to me. I stopped. My hands were shaking. I lowered the camera. That was when I heard it. A voice, not loud, not even clear, just a whisper, stretched thin, coming from the dark angle of the stairwell where the wall bent toward shadow. Stay. One word. The bulb flickered on, almost out. On, and for the first time, I understood. She didn't just want to be seen. She wanted company. Forever. I should have left, but I stayed in that corridor, gripping the camera like a weapon that had already failed me. The whisper echoed again, softer this time, almost coaxing. Stay? I backed toward the stairwell, but the space felt wrong. The hallway seemed longer than before, stretching like the walls had learned how to breathe. The floor seam, once a simple line of cracked tile, bent and curled in my vision, pulling me toward the far end where shadow thickened. I snapped another photo. The flash burst, freezing the world in white. For a fraction of a second, I saw her not behind me, not at the edge, but standing directly in the group where we had once posed. Her head tilted, hair spilling across her pale cheek, eyes fixed on me as though daring me to deny her. When the light faded, the corridor was empty again. But the photo in my hands, it was still warm, still trembling. I held it to the bulb's flicker. 9, 10, 11. Each time I blinked, the count changed. Friends who were gone now stood smiling again, their bodies soft with grain, while the pale figure threaded herself between them like a needle, pulling memory into new shapes. I felt dizzy, like I wasn't standing in the corridor anymore. But inside the photograph itself, the tiles beneath my feet looked less like stone, more like printed texture. The shadows flattened into ink. I whispered to myself, "This isn't real." But the air didn't listen. It pressed closer, heavy, the way a darkroom feels when the chemicals are eating light off the paper. And from somewhere deep in that false horizon, I heard the faint, steady click of a camera shutter over and over, like someone was still taking pictures long after the party had ended. I went back to Maiwa Court in daylight, hoping the sun would weaken her. It didn't. The corridor still smelled of mildew and bleach. The green paint blistered like old skin. The bulb above 6D burned steady, but I no longer trusted steady light. I climbed one more flight and stopped at 6F. Mrs. Wong's door was painted red once, now cracked to the wood. I knocked softly. It took a long time before the door creaked open. She peered out, small and wiry, a dog tucked in the crook of her arm. The animal's teeth were bared before she even saw me. You, she said. Not a question. I need to know, I said. The girl, the one in the corridor. The dog growled low, chest rumbling like distant thunder. Miss Wong stroked its ears, but didn't look away from me. Finally, she opened the door just wide enough to let me slip inside. Her flat was dim, curtains yellowed from decades of smoke and time. The air smelled of camphor and dried herbs. Photographs lined the shelves, old family portraits, their faces faded almost to ghosts themselves. She gestured for me to sit. I didn't. She lived here, Mrs. Wong said, voice flat, Not this flat, but this floor. 6th floor. Newly married. Pretty. Always wearing white shoes. But she never smiled when people took pictures. Always turned her face away. Why? She said cameras steal too much. The words made my chest tighten. Mrs. Wong went on, slower now, as though weighing each memory. One night, the neighbors heard fighting. Then silence. Then, the sound of a shutter, over and over, like someone was taking picture after picture when no one should have been. Her voice dropped. They found her hanging near the stairwell. Rope cut into her throat so deep the skin never closed. The husband left the city. The police called it tragedy, but the building knew better. The dog whined, ears flat, staring at the corner of the room as if someone stood there. Mrs. Wong leaned closer, eyes sharp. You have her in a photo, don't you? I couldn't speak. She nodded anyway, as though the silence was answer enough. She hates photographs. That's why she lives in them. You caught her once. She'll never let go. Every time you look, you invite her closer. Her hand trembled as she touched the shelf of old portraits. That's why I keep mine here. Faces of the dead. Yes, but family. Not strangers. Strangers don't belong in photographs. When they appear, they are not strangers anymore. They are invitations. The dog barked once, sharp, at nothing. Mrs. Wong's eyes flicked toward the door. You should leave, she said, almost pleading. Before she learns your name, I stepped back into the corridor, the door closing behind me with a tired thud. And in the silence that followed, I swore I heard it again. The faint metallic click of a shutter, not from my bag, from the stairwell. I couldn't carry it anymore. The photo, the negatives, the camera. If Mrs. Wong was right, the Minolta wasn't just recording, it was keeping her alive. Maybe if I destroyed it, I could end this. I waited until late night, when the city outside had quieted into that hollow silence before dawn. I set the camera on my desk, the same camera that had caught us smiling all those years ago, the same one that refused to forget her. I raised a hammer. My hands trembled, but I swung hard. Metal cracked. Glass shattered. The lens split into sharp pieces, scattering across the floor. I kept swinging until the Minolta was nothing but a twisted shell. The shutter mangled, the body bent beyond repair. I thought it was over, but then I heard it. Click. Not from the broken body on the desk, from inside the drawer. I pulled it open. The tin was there. The photographs lay stacked neatly, though I hadn't touched them in days. On top sat a new print, still glossy, edges damp from fresh chemicals. It was my room, my desk, the broken camera, and me, standing over it with a hammer in my hand. But there was someone else too, just behind me. Her face leaned into frame pale, wet hair clinging to her cheek, her black eyes fixed not on the camera, not on the room, but on me. I dropped the print. My chest felt hollow, like air had forgotten how to fill it. I backed away, but the walls of my apartment seemed too close, shrinking like the edges of a photograph curling in heat. I realized the truth then. It wasn't the camera keeping her. It was me. Every time I looked, every time I counted, every time I tried to prove she existed, I was the one feeding her. And now, she wasn't just in the photos anymore. She was in the act of looking, in me. I stopped sleeping. Nights stretched long and thin, hours breaking into flickers of light and shadow, like the bulb above 6D had taken residence in my head. The photographs multiplied. I didn't print them. I didn't develop them. But every morning, new ones appeared on my desk, on the floor, sometimes slipped under the door like unwelcome letters. Each one showed the same corridor, the same group of friends, and me, always me. At first, I was standing at the edge, half turned, squinting against the flash the way I remembered. But with each new print, my place shifted. I moved closer to the center. My smile grew wider. My eyes began to lose their catchlight. I told myself to stop looking, stop feeding it. But even turning away wasn't enough, because every reflective surface betrayed me. Windows, mirrors, even the dark screen of the television. After I switched it off, I would see the group photo there, faint but alive. And the longer I looked, the clearer it became. Until one night, the bulb in my apartment flickered on, almost out, on. I felt the air shift. I turned, and the wall above my bed was covered in them. Dozens of prints, taped edge to edge, all of them showing the same thing. The moment just before the shutter clicked in 1989, 8 friends, one pale stranger, and me still in the frame, but fading, my features softening. Grain swallowing me into background. I stumbled back, whispering, "No, no, I'm still here." But the photographs disagreed. In the latest print, fresh and wet on my desk, I wasn't in the group anymore. I was behind the camera, holding it, framing them, watching. And just over my shoulder, I could see her closer than ever, her lips near my ear, as though she were teaching me how to count. 9, 10, 11. The bulb snapped out. The room drowned in darkness. And in that black silence, the shutter clicked. Morning came, but it didn't feel like morning. The sun touched my window, yet the room stayed dim, as if the light itself refused to enter. I searched the floor for the photographs, ready to sweep them away, to deny them, to pretend. But there was only one now, a single print, lying face up on the desk. I knew what I would see before I looked. The corridor, the green walls, the flickering bulb frozen mid-pulse. All of us, standing together. Carmen's paper crown, Dez's crooked grin, Kit's nervous eyes, Faye's soft smile, Terrence, Alan, Ming, every one of them, exactly as they had been. And me, not behind the camera, not on the edge, but standing in the middle, shoulder to shoulder with the others, grinning like I had never known fear. There were no strangers anymore. No 9th, no 10th, no 11th. We were all part of the same photograph now. I should have felt terror. Instead, I felt something worse: acceptance, a warmth creeping through me, like the frame had always been waiting. As I stared, the edges of the photo curled, not with heat, but with life. The grain shimmered, the shadows deepened, and I realized the photograph was no longer on the desk. It was all around me. The walls were paper. The air smelled of old chemicals. The world hummed like a darkroom light. And when I blinked, I didn't blink alone. Dozens of eyes blinked with me. We are 9. We are 10. We are however many you choose to count. And next time you lift a camera, maybe, just maybe, you'll see us standing behind you,